And Greystones has been the blueprint for quite a few novels, but they tend to be Maeve Binchy, they tend to be childhood kind of reminiscence about, you know, donkey races and killing rats down the harbour, that sort of stuff. This is different, and I don't know whether you even had second thoughts about, can I set a thriller in Greystones? Would it work?
Yeah, I kind of did, and I sort of hesitated about whether to set it in Greystones at all. You know, I played around with, you know, other places and other names, and then I thought, well, where's the fun in that? You know, right. I mean, I moved here when I was 10 years old. I know the town well, but it was almost an opportunity to sort of give local people sort of two mysteries. Like on the one hand, it's a thriller, so it's a, you know, a murder mystery. There's a prison drama element to it. There's the whole thing about who did what to who and when.
Right.
But there's that other level maybe of is that really who I think it is? You know, or is that me? You know, and
right, sorry, Steve. This stupid dog. Stop. I'm trying to make you stop moving. Stop. Sorry, I just should explain why I'm suddenly going to be having a battle just to the right here.
Don't worry.
Sorry, to the left. But, sorry, well, I would think too that perfect combination of a whodunit's always, you know, that sort of thing about anybody's, you know, mystery about how exactly this is going to pay off. You've got a brother coming out of prison for revenge. But the who the feck is that is a whole new layer of reading. But it came to that where you sort of, you know, having to, you know, not give too much away and saying, I wonder how much I can reveal here without being obvious. And
yeah, I mean, it's a mystery. Like, I mean, I haven't written a thriller like this before, you know, but I don't hold with that sort of recent snobbery people have that it says, like, you know, a new Kazuo Ishiguro is a novel, a new John Connolly is a mystery, it's just a book. You know, I think John Connolly is probably one of the greatest prose stylists that's ever come out of this country, full stop.
And a new Dan Brown is a travesty, that's what they say, isn't it?
Yeah. Moving on, I wouldn't mention those two guys in the same sentence.
Right.
But, you know, I mean, there's passages in the Charlie Parker novel that are as good as anything Colin McCann or John Van Velde have written, and I know they'd agree. But and I think that snobbery's going anyway. And if you look, the new John Van Velde Quirk novel, the crime novel, is actually out under his own name. He's no longer hiding behind the Benjamin Black pseudonym, and I think that says something.
Yeah.
But for me, writing a thriller and setting it in Greystones, there was an element where you kind of had to decide, well, actually, I'm going to double down on this. I'm not going to be subtle. I'm actually going to deliberately just go. I suppose the difference is, like, I love Greystones. I've lived here pretty much all my life, but my main character, Jack Finch, hates it. He loses no opportunity to lash out or make good comments about the people.
He's basically, he's Bray. Bray opened for him to give me his full name. But that idea too, that you know, you know, obviously Telford Evans has that very dodgy look about him. He could easily be a killer. We're not sure yet. But then, if you describe a very handsome, beautiful, debonair, and witty local journalist,
yeah, you're in it.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Like, everybody knows that. But did you clear it? I don't know whether that was a necessity. We thought, well, I better say this to that person just so they know I don't really think they're killers, or I don't think they're mad. Or...
No, I thought about it. I mean, look, I've always given away the very meagre profits from anything I write anyway.
Right.
And in this case, if you go into the Village Bookstore and you pick up a copy of The Devil himself, you're not only helping your local bookstore, you're also helping contribute to the Greystones Cancer Support Network. And I suppose in those circumstances, I thought, well, really, is anyone going to sue me? So, you know, it takes off the shackles. And the other side of it is, what are you going to do, right? Are you going to stand up in public and say, you know, that moron on page 45
is me,
or that asshole on page 123 is me? So, you know, I'll take the risk.
Well, that feeling then of, you know, having, for one of a better, you know, kind of description, you have your characters really to play with. You can put anybody in there, and you've sort of got all these spare parts around. You could just bring. So I don't know whether that was a lot of fun, where you could just have somebody walk in the room that you know them in your head already. You don't have to figure out where's he coming from, what's her history, what sort of character is she.
It is easier in that sense, you know, because you kind of know the landscape of the book. You don't have to invent it. You know where the streets lie, you know where the beach is, you know where some of the events take place. But you know, it is a bit like a Rubik's Cube, like with a mystery. Like, you kind of have to know, you have to go back 3 spaces to go 1 space right. And I'd written the first draft of this book 6 years ago, and effectively had thrown the Rubik's Cube at the wall because I couldn't figure out what was wrong, what was missing. And around a year ago during the pandemic, I picked it up again, and I was just driving the car and I went, I know what's wrong. I figured out the missing bit, and after that it all kind of slotted into place. So hopefully, I mean, if the thriller's well written, you should finish it and go, oh, okay, that surprised me. Yeah. But then be able to go back and say, oh, okay, I see where A led to B and where all the bits connect together. It's hard work, but fun.
And the book's got to work on 2 levels, of course, because you're sort of having that wonderful kind of indulgence of being able to play with your hometown and people within that town. But then you know that there's Joe and Joanna Sixpack living in Canada who wouldn't necessarily have any idea who these people are. So it has to work of its own kind of volition as well. It has to be its own. I mean, was that? Do you think it was just a natural kind of conclusion that people would just get into these characters? They don't have to know them.
Yeah, I suppose that's the challenge, and you don't know if you're successful or not. People will tell you that. I mean, I share a literary agent with Stuart McBride, who's a Scottish thriller writer. He's like regularly topping the Sunday Times bestseller list.
Wow.
He's really good, but he writes his stories in a they're very carefully constructed. He'll put the whole plot of the novel across a wall and post-its and work it all out carefully. I'm not able to do that. Like, I kind of made up the mystery as I went along, and then have to go back and do lots of repairs.
Right. Well, there is that sort of, with movie storyboarding and all that, there is a kind of, almost for a lot of people, have a great ending and go back from there. And especially if it's a reveal that you can, ravel rather than unravel. For you, has it always been that way, that it's a sort of organic growth as you write it and you're never quite sure where the ending is because you want to be maybe surprised yourself? Or
yeah, I mean, when I wrote the first draft of that, it was before I got a diagnosis of bipolar 2. So I was actually writing 6 different books all at the same time. I was pretty wired.
Nice.
So there was very little planning involved. Right. But I also find it's like,
Are you allowed to have coffee?
Sorry?
Are you allowed to have coffee?
Yeah, you're all right. You should be safe for half an hour.
All right. I'm just thinking, if you've got 6 novels going on at the same time, that's a lot of characters there.
Well, thankfully now I take the pills.
Right.
But I suppose also it's more interesting when you're writing not to know what's going to happen next. I'd find it really hard work if I got it all mapped out in advance.
Right.
You're sort of hearing the story as you're writing the story. You go, oh, well, that's interesting. Let's go over there and see what happens.
Right. Because there is that, and there's obviously a very good skill to be able to work backwards from a great ending. But there is... Oh, yeah. Oh, no, come over here, you Wally. But that idea that you would have the, as I said, the freedom to sort of create anything. As Raymond Chandler says, when in doubt, have somebody walk in the room with a gun. So you can just sort of throw anything into that mix, and it doesn't really affect the storyline because you can, add that to the mix. And
you can,
keep at
and it's like even playing with things like, casual violence. Right, I hadn't written, scenes of casual violence before. That's fun, sort of unexpected
Lockdown
encounters.
brings that out.
It does. I mean, well, just because something is escapist doesn't mean it can't deal with serious themes as well. So yes, it's a thriller, but it's also about, how violence can reset someone's moral compass, and about the nature of evil and all that big stuff as well. You can put that in too, while having people beat the crap out of each other under the railway arch.
Well, is there a little bit of because you've done thrillers before? I guess there's some sort of cathartic thing as well, and people watch horror movies and indulge in that entertainment, we'll say, because it does sort of deal with issues that would necessarily otherwise, I should say, would be sort of uncertain and more frightening and more crippling.
And it's the thing that keeps you reading as well. I mean, like, nobody would deny that Rebecca is a thriller. Right? Or, Heart of Darkness is a suspense novel, or Lord of the Flies That We All Did in School is a suspense novel.
Yes.
You kind of, all those elements about what's going to happen next and, the things that keep you reading are not separate from having, an interesting theme maybe, on a sort of literary side of it,
So I'm wondering whether when people come to read the book, I don't know whether there's nothing you can really give away or tell them that you should read it a certain way, because it is all about the reader bringing a certain amount of their imagination to the book. But just that very fact that their brain is obviously going to be working a little bit, into that area of, do I recognize this person? And what's weird about that is there's the actual rug pull then of the story itself. You're almost been pulled in different directions, like a good David Lynch movie that you're not sure. Exactly.
It's a puzzle. I mean, right. I have a few friends who I send advance copies out to, and I was really curious. It's like, are they going to predict the ending? Will they see where it's going? Will they spot the twists? And thankfully, so far, no.
Right.
And that's quite satisfying.
Now, from your own kind of career as a writer, it is. A daughter as a writer. There's people like, it's like acting, it's like musician. It is a tough kind of world to be in, because it's really about sort of satisfying a need rather than thinking, wow, this is going to make me rich and famous.
Yeah, it's not going to do that. Apparently the average published author in the UK earns $6,000 a year.
Yeah.
So if you're writing to make money, you're probably
What
wasting
I'd give
your
for
time.
that.
So my daughter did creative writing in college in the States. You know?
Okay.
And again, they tell them from the start, is look, the reality is you do it because you love it, you know, or do it because you feel compelled to do it. If you're doing it because you think you're going to make loads of money, maybe you'll be lucky, and maybe you'll be
1%
significantly more
that's the
talented than someone that like me, and you might, but the chances are really low.
So that idea then of taking that step into, oh, this, I'm going to do this, was that maybe we've dealt with this before, but I'm always curious when you kind of realise, oh, I'm a writer, like this is what I do, or I don't know if it was just...
I'd hesitate to say that, you know.
Okay.
I'm a dad, I suppose, and fundamentally that's who I am. But I've always written, and I was like you. I'm sure I was one of those kids down the back paying no attention, scribbling away in my notebook because that was a more interesting place to be. And I've always just done it. I don't know if I could not write.
Right. But the step that artists take from this thing that they love to do when they have time to themselves to actually putting it out in the world is a big step. It tends to come with all these mixed emotions. Of course, it's a realization, it's a wonderful feeling, but there's also now you're kind of vulnerable to other people.
Oh yeah. I mean, you don't know, you genuinely don't know if it's any good, and it might be crap. And then you're going to be walking down the street and people could be, there's the guy who wrote that really, really rubbish book. You have to take that risk. I mean, and the other side is like, why not? Like, you and I were probably too old to care. You know, I'm kind of at that stage. I don't care. Look, if somebody enjoys it, brilliant. If they buy a copy and some money goes to Greystone's Cancer Support and they hate it, still something good came out of it. So what now? You know?
Now, do we have the makings of a you know, you think of Midsummer Night's Murder, Midsummer's Murder, all these locations that a huge amount of, you know, thriller writing happens within a small town. Are you tempted to think, well, this could be, you know, a series? I don't know whether, I haven't read the end of the book, so I don't know whether we could sort of have this character live on, but certainly others.
I don't know about that. I quite like the idea of there being regular crime happening on the streets of Greystone, you know, other than people absconding without paying for their cappuccinos.
Run!
You know?
Don't be
You've
telling
played
people.
already, haven't you?
Don't be telling people. But that is always a joy for people, I think, when they you know, when they get to Hogwarts or when they get to a location and they feel, especially when you've invested in this set of people and this world. So I would hope and imagine that would be something you could return to and
I hadn't thought of it. You know,
because every revenge tale has another revenge waiting in the wings.
Well, there's definitely a potential for a follow-up. If you get to the end of the book, you can see that there's another story that could follow. You know, but I haven't gone any further than that yet.
Rock and roll. Well, listen, we'll put the links up. It's in the Village Bookshop. I do think I'm looking forward now because I, you know, naturally know quite a few of the people in the town. Just those little sort of signs where I'll just twig and say, okay, that's who we're talking about now.
There's people you'll know.
But and the journalist guy is very handsome and debonair and he's slim. Did you make him slim?
Well, you know,
did you make him slim?
Anorexic.
Did you? Oh, perfect.